So once again, good morning, everyone, good afternoon, or maybe good evening to everyone from wherever, from whichever part of the world that you're attending to the Journalist Emeritus Foundation's Media and Journalism webinars. I see some colleagues who missed the first session, so very briefly, my name is Cemre Ülker. I'm the UN representative of the Journalist Emeritus Foundation. And as I mentioned, just for the colleagues that were not imprisoned on Monday, Journalist Emeritus Foundation is an international civil society organization dedicated to the culture of peace, human rights, and sustainable development. We are based in New York and affiliated with the United Nations Department of Global Communications. So far, our sessions are doing great. We received so many positive, wonderful feedbacks after session 1, 2. And I hope we will continue to engage in transformative dialogue at this platform to empower journalists and professionals from diverse different backgrounds who are here to learn more about the tools and principles of media and journalism in order to disseminate information on whichever topic that they work on, that they have their expertise on, and of course, mobilize societies at so many different levels for a sustainable and positive social change. Our topic today is the role of journalism in creating stable societies, and we will gladly have Yazid Kamaldian to lead the discussion, just like the session on Monday. And some house rules that I would like to go over. That would be great if we can make sure that our mics are muted throughout the session, unless we have the floor to make an intervention, ask a question, or present our comments. And for a better communication, if that is possible, I would really appreciate if everyone can have their cameras on, of course, if possible, but that would be great to see everyone. And please be active in the chat too. Monday was a great turnout of questions and comments, and please do not wait till the Q&A session at the very last, because I believe Yazid will also give the mic to anyone as we have questions, comments, and this is all about engagement and active participation. And I just leave the platform for Yazid to start the session. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back, of course, to session 2 of the webinar series. It's wonderful to have everyone back. I do see some new names of people joining us, so thank you for everyone coming back to join us. Please remember that if you're not speaking, to mute your microphone. So as you know, today's topic, in today's conversation, we want to talk about how journalism contributes towards stable societies. And when we thought about this topic, what was really important for us was to look for people or projects, that speak to this topic, right? And we found a number of, projects and a number of people that we could talk to, and I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves because they can speak best about what they do. Let's start with Marika. Marika, do you mind doing a short introduction about what it is you do and of course who you are as well? And then we'll go to our next guests.
Thank you very much, Yazid. I'm really happy to be here and thank you for inviting me. It's an exciting opportunity to talk about my work, but also to contribute to knowledge and to sharing knowledge, which is, which I always appreciate. So I'm a team leader and a key expert on a global project called Global Exchange on Religion in Society. It's an EU-funded project that me and my organization implement on behalf of the European Commission. So this project is basically facilitating a global conversation about the role of religion in society, and why it is relevant for our discussion today is because we created a network of 175 JERIS network members, as we call them, and we have 150 civil society actors and 25 journalists. And in that sense, our approach is very innovative because we invited a combination of these two groups of actors or activists who are both interested often in the role of religion that religion plays in the society. And as we know very well, religion often is seen as a cause of instability in many societies, rightly or wrongly. But we can talk about that later. But we really wanted to, to give opportunity to both of these voices to come together in one platform. And also our civil society actors come from both religious and non-religious background. So we have from religious leaders to community-based organizations, very small, who do wonderful projects on the ground across the world. We have participants from 55 countries, and we also work our activities, we implement our activities in 6 countries, 2 in Europe, 1 in Africa, 1 in Asia, and then America, which is, as Yazid already mentioned, but which is where we travel and take a group of participants to each of these countries to talk to local stakeholders. So it's like a multi-level connecting. So we talk to local stakeholders, to local media, sometimes to government officials as well, again, to discuss the role that religion plays in the society, but not from the theological perspective, but more about how, how religious actors and non-religious actors both contribute to issues such as social inclusion, such as societal resilience, and such as managing diversity. And what journalists are contributing as well, they're teaching their civil society colleagues how to amplify their voice, how to communicate their amazing work into the public space so that it becomes more recognizable and better heard. And in that sense, so journalists, they do their job, they write articles about the themes that we're discussing with our participants, but they also help, the civil society to engage better and to communicate better. And maybe I will stop here, if that's okay, Yazid, and then you can ask me questions later. And please remind me if there was something else that maybe I should have said and I didn't.
Marika, no, that is a brilliant introduction. Thank you. So that was a good way of, I guess, understanding the project, the Global Exchange on Religion in Society. So thank you. We'll definitely come back to that, and we would like to, of course, find out how journalists and the work of the project contributes towards creating a stable society. So thank you, Marika. So our next guest, Uday, is all the way from India. Uday, tell us a bit more about the organization that you represent and what it does, and of course, also your role in that organization.
Well, thank you very much, Yazid. Very good morning, afternoon, and evening to all of you, because I have chosen all the 3 times of the day because we are in different time zones. Anyway, I'm from India, as Yazid already explained to you. I have been in journalism for the past 40 years. Over 4 decades of my life have been devoted to the cause of journalism. Recently left the paper, one of the leading English dailies of India, called The Statesman. It was founded by the British in the latter part of the 19th century, and it is known for championing the cause of free speech without fear and favor. So that was the cornerstone of the kind of journalism that was done by my paper. I was its editor till recently. Right now, I have been writing edits for another paper. And these edits span the entire world. In fact, today itself, I wrote an edit on the situation in Myanmar, where the International Court of Justice last week cleared the deck for putting the military junta suppressing the voice of protests and the voice of freedom in Myanmar ruthlessly. Especially, it hunted down, the military junta hunted down the Rohingya Muslims. Over 1.3 million people have been affected. 600,000 are living in camps in Bangladesh, and they have been victims of state-sponsored repression, killing, rape, name all sorts of crimes were committed. And right now, the stage is set for bringing the military junta to book. So that was my edit today. So that's one issue. In fact, I have to cover the issues all over the world. So that's one part of my active journalism. That apart, I represent the International Association of Religion Journalists, the IARJ. I am its chairperson. We have members from across the 5 continents, over 900 members we have. And we have been writing and helping the cause of religion and journalism. Apparently, there may be some confusion about the 2 terms, how journalists can be covering religions. That's not a one-sided view. What we do is that the religion is the greatest constituency all over the world. I mean, people who control the world, the democracies, they belong to some religion or the other. And this faith, we act as a bridge to build faiths. So this is what we have been working. I'll be talking more on our topic later on.
Thanks, Uday. Thank you for that. So that, of course, is a brief introduction from the chairperson of the International Association of Religion Journalists. We'll also get into talking about the difference between being a religious journalist and a religion journalist. We'll get into that a bit later. Now let's go to our third guest. Hi, are you there? Can you please introduce yourself as well and briefly tell us about the work that you do in relation to our topic today?
Hi, I'm Dr. Raj Gavender. I'm from South Africa. I am a social anthropologist. My master's and PhD was based on cross-cultural studies. The purpose of that research was to find commonalities between different cultures in South Africa, the traditional cultures, the indigenous cultures, etc., so that we can find meaningful ways of finding peace and harmony in society if we know each other better. However, amongst my many qualifications, I've also qualified as a journalist. And in my early days as an educator, when I was an educator, I should write for community-based newspapers. And in my later life as a government worker, as a director of arts and culture, I extensively wrote opinion pieces in national newspapers. And I also participated as a commentator on national TV on aspects related to social cohesion and nation building. The whole purpose was to use journalism positively in finding common ground and finding topics that are related towards finding peace and harmony in society. Then when I retired in 2019, I was appointed as a social cohesion advocate by the government of South Africa. And the role of a social cohesion advocate is to conceptualize and implement projects that are related towards peace and harmony in the country. The areas that we cover are gender-based violence, youth issues, disability, economic, climate change, etc. So there's a whole range of programs that we do meaningfully in all provinces of South Africa so that we can work towards social cohesion and nation building. Yes, I am very happy to be part of this particular topic because I am very passionate about developing stable societies through social cohesion and nation building projects. And I feel that journalism and journalists have a meaningful role to play in strengthening the ability to create stable societies. And I'm very, very pleased to also be associated as an advisor on the Journalists and Writers Foundation. It is a very, very esteemed organization that is doing remarkable work in terms of promoting good journalistic practices throughout the world. So briefly, but during the course of my paper, I will outline some of the other work that I do because it's related to the topic. Thank you so much.
So thank you. Those will be our three speakers, our guests for today's panel. On the first discussion, we focused a lot on, I would say, the more practical side of journalism. We talked to freelance journalists, and of course, we learned from them what it's like to practice as freelance journalists. Now, while today focuses on how we do journalism as well, I would say that the focus today looks more also at the ethical role and the responsibilities of journalists, right? So I think I'd like to start off with a basic question, Let us look at the roles and responsibilities of journalists when it comes to creating stable societies. And of course, we would like to go back to our guests and ask them what they think the roles and responsibilities are of journalists in creating stable societies. Marika, would you mind starting us off? Talk to us about, maybe through the lens of your project, how you envision and how you actually aim to achieve this through your project.
Okay. Yes, I agree with you. It's a very important question, actually two questions that I think perhaps we need to look at a little bit separately. And I also want to say, of course, there is Jerry's project that I'm working on now, but I also have a long history of working in journalism, first of all in independent media, in my native Balkans, where I come from, but then also in media for development, which is basically, I'm not going to say using, but utilizing journalistic and media practices for development. So I think, and I'm saying this because there is obviously a wide recognition of the fact that journalists do play a role in creating stability, but also they often have a role in creating instability. And I can give you an example of my own example. So, for example, so I was, I was born and lived in former Yugoslavia, which, as probably most people know, disintegrated in a bloody war and ended up in 6 different countries. And we've seen there a blatant example of journalists and the media creating instability and fueling the war narratives, which basically led to some of the worst atrocities on the European soil since the Second World War II. At the same time, there was these unfortunate events different journalists to take an independent path and to basically become promoters of peace and of democracy. So I think it's you know, it's very difficult to assign a role to the journalists. I mean, we can of course discuss it, but I would like to emphasize that that very often it is you know, it is something individual, and I would probably refrain from a formulation which would say, you know, the journalists, they should have this role and they should have that role, but I'm much more in favor of looking at the journalistic engagement and the role they play through, you know, through experience and through research, and trying to understand why they shift, you know, why they shift to one or the other side, and why sometimes they play a really important role in stability. But why is it that, you know, at other times they can be really passionate about driving instability, or really blind about the impact of their work that creates instability? I think the role of the journalist also is very much shaped by this, by the discourse of freedom of expression, freedom of information, and in that sense, you know, it's not the roles usually and responsibilities. They usually imply some kind of boundaries. But of course, when it comes to, you know, freedom of expression, these boundaries are exactly what we don't want to have. So I think the discussion that we're having here needs to be framed in the, you know, in connection with the freedom of expression, and how we, are we free societies, and to what, you know, where is this line between freedom of expression and the role towards creating stability or towards creating instability? I personally, in all the work that I have done so far, including Jerry's project, have been inclined towards creating stability. And certainly most of the journalists that we have on our project are also very much open-minded people who see it as their responsibility or as their role to discuss some of the most challenging issues that you know, that surround societies today. So, for example, you will remember we were in Atlanta together. Our topic or project theme for Atlanta was being a minority. So we looked at the issues. What does it mean to be a minority, and what kind of minority in the United States and in the world today? And we witnessed some of the you know, history and still present experiences of racial discrimination and discrimination on the basis of different identities. And certainly, for example, our platform has created an opportunity for the journalists to engage, as I said earlier, with some of the civil society representatives, and to, you know, to have a different input, or to have a different discussion with them on the topic of being a minority, religious, racial, you know, sexual, gender minority. And I think that's one of the important things when we talk about the roles and responsibilities, because you know, I think as a society, we also tend to put a lot of expectations on the journalists in terms of expecting that they understand the public good, that they should be oriented towards the public goods, they should be oriented towards democracy, promoting democratic processes, promoting peace, etc. But obviously, it's you know, it's this, even if somebody is very very pro-democracy or pro-peace oriented, I think it's still very important to continuously have a conversation about what the role and responsibility of the media and the journalist is. And I will just finish here, to stop here by saying that platforms, I believe that platforms like the one we created through Jerry's network are exactly the sounding, you know, the types of sounding boards which we have to give opportunity both to journalists and to those who find journalism relevant for many different reasons, to continuously talk about roles and responsibilities that journalists have without being too normative.
Thanks, Marika. I just have one small question to ask, and just to share that, of course, as a journalist, you know, I guess the responsibility one takes on is to, dare I say, tell the truth. And of course, we have found many examples, and you have mentioned, you know, that journalists can also contribute towards creating instability, right? And that could be through propaganda. That could be through being biased, of course. Journalists, you know, may have an interest, a personal interest in reporting a certain way. And we've seen examples, whether it's in Africa, where I'm from South Africa, where we've seen, you know, in Rwanda, where the media was used to mobilize people to be violent towards, you know, one group to another. So did you, and of course, we also saw in the United States, where I'm based presently, how the media, if I can say, demonized some people, you know, because of prejudice and bias against some people. So did your project, did this project start out of a need? Why was this project started? Is it because you, just please remind us, is it because you saw, did the European Union see a need for journalists to start being more aware of how they represent certain communities? Tell us a bit about why this project was so important.
So this project is it's a new approach that the European Union is developing for engagement with religion. So probably most people here know about FORB, freedom of religion and belief approach, and the EU felt that this approach, and also there is a lot of focus, especially in the last 2 decades, on violent extremism, on you know, terrorist narratives, etc. But the EU felt that there was a need to find a different modality for engagement with religion, because religious actors engage with society from at the very bottom levels, often in the margins, those with those who live in the margins of the society, with the excluded ones, with those whose voice is not heard. And there was, you know, there was a feeling that this conversation about importance of freedom of religion and belief, which of course stands. I mean, it's not questioning this, but it's just like there was a need to look at religion from a different angle and to think about how can we look at deeper, or in a different way of what religion is what is the religion's role, and then one level was to bring together religious and non-religious actors, which usually are gathered separately and they don't talk between each other. But then it was also recognized, and that was the methodology we proposed for this project, was to introduce the media and to invite the journalists. So we have a lot of religion journalists on the project, and some who are not, but who work on, who have experience on reporting on issues of diversity, exclusion, maybe marginalization. And the reason why our journalist part of our cohort is exactly because it was not possible to have this conversation without including the journalists, which also tells you about the importance of their role. And going forward, I think the EU has definitely recognized that the voice of journalists is very important in this conversation, but also in the transfer of knowledge, which is the key for our projects, the transfer of knowledge between journalists and civil society actors.
Thanks, Marika. So I'm going to now come back to Uday, who, like we have heard, is the chairman of the International Association of Religion Journalists. And just to share that I'm a founding member of this organization. We founded this organization in Bellagio, Italy, with the intention of making sure that as journalists, we can improve our reporting on religion. Now, just to say that there's a difference between being a religious journalist, which is someone who follows a particular faith, and you might actually work for a church, a mosque, a synagogue, a faith-based organization that puts out some form of media. So we know the Catholic Church, many of the Catholic churches, they have their own newspapers and newsletters. And we view that the person working for the organization, we view those persons as religious journalists because they are doing, it's almost like they are part of the fraternity of preaching about the religion, But the religion journalist writes about religion in a manner where they are not involved in, if I can say, propagating the religion, but asking questions about religion and making sure that we begin to ask the tough questions as well in our society about religion, So I just wanted to make sure that we understand that there's a difference, and that religion journalism or a religion journalist is still a journalist. You are still going to be held accountable to the same journalistic ethics and principles. So your role is not to be a propagandist. You need to be a journalist who is fair and ethical, and your journalism should create or should contribute towards creating a stable society, not fuel conflict. And we have unfortunately seen journalism and the media playing a role in fueling conflict. And Uday, you can now talk to us about, how your organization, how the organization aims through its work to ensure, that journalists are part of this creation of stable societies. And then I see some questions coming in as well, but let's give Uday just a brief moment to answer or talk about that question. And then we'll go into the discussion group as well.
Well, I will mainly speak on the basis of my personal experience as a journalist. It's my great pleasure to have been invited to share some of my thoughts with such an august audience, viewers drawn from about 30 countries. Before I delve deep into the topic of our webinar today, let me give a little bit of background and this will help understand the issue. The French word le jour, as you all know, means the day. You can guess how the word journalism is derived from the old French word journal and the Latin diurnal, which means daily. In the 17th century, journal came to mean a personal diary where one writes the proceedings, dealings with people or events that happened every day. By the next century, the meaning of journal changed. It started to mean daily newspaper, whose task it is to inform the readers of daily events. Now, does it mean then that we journalists merely record a catalog of daily events with ephemeral existence to be forgotten the next day? Such a thought may demoralize and disillusion journalists about the profession and mission they have chosen. Well, the answer to the question is both yes and no. Yes, because we do dish out information on daily occurrences. And no, because we do more than that. In fact, we write the first rough draft of history. As such, our work has a pride of place, not in the trash bin, but in the archives, to be hunted up by historians and posterity. Now, journalism is an integral part of democracy, which means rule by the people. The word democracy is a combination of two Greek words, demos, meaning people, and kratia, meaning rule. In democracy, people elect a government for their well-being through proper management of the country's wealth and resources. To find out if the government of the day is honestly discharging its duties, people need information about its functioning. If they find the government corrupt, the people in democracy have the right to change it. This is the beauty of democracy, and journalism acts as its ally by supplying an unending stream of information about public life in all spheres. If any attempt is made by any individual, group, community, political outfits, or a government to disrupt public life and the social fabric, journalism comes into play. It is the bounden duty of honest journalists to bring to the people knowledge about such heinous attempts so as to save democracy and bring stability. This is what makes journalism, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Uday, I think
I
think that was good. I think that was good. But I think we also now want to move into, I think everything you said was amazing in terms of especially talking about our role as journalists, right? But we need to break up our time for everybody and also for participants, you know, if that's okay with you.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Uh-huh. Raj, are you still with us? You're good?
I'm good. I'm very good.
Is there anything you'd like to reflect on briefly, and then we'll go to our participants? Anything around sort of the kind of roles and responsibilities that journalists should be taking?
Yes, I think a truly transformed media can play a very, very significant and meaningful role in ensuring that citizens have greater access to information that can promote peace and harmony. The freedom of expression and freedom of the press and other media are enshrined in most democratic constitutions throughout the world. These constitutions also protects the freedom to receive or impart information or ideas, freedom or artistic creativity. Whilst this is true, dear people, the content must be filtered to ensure that the information transmitted for the consumption of the public must be used to create stable societies. And journalists have that very creative role in doing so. A transformed media have a greater role to play in ensuring people make informed choices rather than acting out of ignorance or misinformation, especially on social media platforms, which are often difficult to control. As you know, last year, during July in South Africa, in KwaZulu-Natal, the country where you come from, right, there was this looting and there was this racial tensions in KwaZulu-Natal. Now, many social media platforms promoted fear and injustice to the reality on the ground. And as a result, people started getting either provocative or they started fearing, and this fear created havoc in the country, in South Africa. And that is why I believe that journalists can play a very meaningful role in promoting unity rather than disinformation, right? And this situation extends not only to media itself, but across the entire value chain of publishing, printing, distribution, circulation, research, and advertising. So as future journalists, you have a role to play as a change maker. And that is why whether you are a spokesperson, a writer, a journalist, a public relations officer, radio, television, or web, you have an important role to play to create a stable society.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Raj. Thanks. Okay, so participants, no pressure. You have that responsibility. You've heard it from our speakers. As journalists, we have this responsibility to, make sure that our journalism does not cause more chaos in our society. Now, there are some questions that have been coming through. I will say that some of these questions have been answered. We have questions from Rahma, Rahel, and Rachel. Interesting that their names sound quite similar. Does anybody still want to ask their question? Rahma, are you around? Sanjay, we are going to start with the questions as they have come in. So we've received these questions before you raised your hand. Rahma, do you still want to ask your question, or do you feel that it's been answered? Your question, are you there, Rahma?
Yes.
You can just tell us where you're phoning in from as well, because it's really important that we share that. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm phoning from Qatar. So my question was like, Mrs. Marika said that the journalist's role is, like the journalist can contribute in the process of peace building, but also in reporting the issues. So I asked the question before she said that. So my question was like, if the journalist has the role in contributing in the process of peace building, how can he or she does such role?
Maybe I can answer that question.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, but we do also have the question directed at Marika. Raj, you can go ahead, but then we want to hear from Marika.
Okay.
Shall I go ahead?
Yeah, sure, please.
Or do you want to give an opportunity to some to other people to ask questions, and then we can answer them?
I think let's answer the question one at a time, so that I feel that we don't want to lose the essence of the question. We don't have to we can keep our answers brief anyway. Thank you.
Okay, so can you just repeat the question? I just lost it now.
Yeah. So Rahma, just I guess Rahma wanted to know how journalists can play a role towards peace building. There have been answers towards that, I guess. But if you want to reiterate anything or add anything new, that will be great.
I think one thing that we need to mention here, which is really important and really prominent in the journalism world, is ethical journalism. So there are certain editorial standards and norms. So, for example, I used to work. I started my career at the BBC. And BBC has very strict, editorial rules and has a very very detailed training of journalists. And then more recently, for example, this ethical journalism network, which was created and led by Aidan White, who was also one of our consultants on the project, is highlighting the importance of ethical journalism. So it's not just about what you said, Yazid, it's not just about telling truth, but it's also it's deeper, it's about how you report, and it's about making sure that you're not biased, irrespective of what you see or what you learn. But that you're also ethical in your endeavors, both in the topics that you're discussing, but also in how you discuss them. And I think these issues are really important when it comes to contribution that the journalists make to building peace. So it's not being having good intentions or meaning well is often not enough. It's important to have a certain level of training and to adhere to certain editorial and journalistic standards in order to then be able to make a credible contribution to the discussion about peace and ultimately stability.
Okay. Raj, was there something you wanted to add?
Right. Basically, what I wanted to say, that when it comes to peace building, especially for religious journalists and so on, I would think it depends on the target audience. For example, if a publication is being reached out to a Christian community, then religious principles on Christianity and so on is acceptable. Or if it's targeting a Muslim community or whatever. However, if it is mainstream journalism where the publication is directed towards a multicultural, multi-religious community, then we need to be very careful in the biasness in the reporting, especially for religious journalists. That platform needs to be used to promote multi-faith dialogue. So the journalistic direction should be where you are giving a balanced view of a particular aspect regarding religion, so that it creates multi-faith dialogue, and that is more acceptable. So it depends on the target that's going to be reading the publication.
Sangha, do you want to ask your question? You can just tell us where you are from as well.
Hello, hi. Greeting from Bhutan. It's evening here, almost 10 p.m. My name is Sangirapten. I'm a news reporter writing for Business Bhutan. It is a private financial weekly newspaper. Basically, I report politics, and gender issues, cross-border issues, and social issues. My background, I was student before, and later on in 2008, I became a monk, and I'm also a major follower of Buddhism. By virtue, I'm a Buddhist, and I have also done master in Buddhist philosophy while I have done master in mass communication and journalism. And coincidentally, today it is an interesting topic here, but unfortunately, I couldn't attend the previous session. The role of media to make a society stable. Okay, role of media through religion. And when I talk of religion, when there's a topic of religion, okay, I am very much impressed. And actually, it is through religion that we can keep society very stable, harmonious. But the thing is, what happens? Okay, be it any religion, but the common followers, okay, they try to polarize. Okay, they negate others' religions and oppress one's religion, and our Nobel Peace Laureate, His Holiness Dalai Lama, he always talk of interfaith religion. He visits mosque also, okay, he visits synagogue, he visits church, and okay, he is a Buddhist master, but he respect others' religion also. And here what we can play is, as a media, okay, we have to compromise between the religion, and we shouldn't let people to polarize their own religion, okay, disrespecting others' religion. I think this way we can bring promote peace in the world. But my question here to Marika, or okay, whoever may be, okay, to write this sort of story by the journalist, okay, what specific program you have for the journalist?
Okay, Sanjay, thank you so much for your input and your question. I firstly just want to acknowledge that what you are saying is, exactly the kind of thinking that we are promoting here. You can study religion and you can be a devout Buddhist, Muslim, Christian, whichever faith you want to follow. But remember, when you are a journalist, you still have to follow the ethics and principles of journalism. Now, Sanjay, I don't know at what point you joined the conversation today, but Marika has spoken quite a bit about her program, the project that she is the leader on. And do you mind maybe checking the chat? Because in the chat,
Okay,
Marika's also...
Maybe I joined after Marika spoke.
Yeah.
And in
There's a
between,
number of
I can
links.
just, if you don't mind, Yazid, I can just just mention like one specific training, capacity building training we organized for our journalists on the project. So they're all like mid-level to senior journalists, so they have lots of experience. I mean, most people have like 15 plus years of experience, but what we did, so we had a senior trainer who basically went through for this 2-day training, was about editorial perspective and teaching them. So as a journalist, you write an article and then you have an editor who then checks that article and makes sure that different things are okay. But we gave them this, this editorial lens as well, that not all of them have had, which basically helps with, it's like adding a new skill and helps with also thinking, seeing your article from the perspective of an editor and a potential reader. And then our senior trainer also created a list of specific terminology to help that the journalist should or could use when writing about the role of religion, but also about some other topics like minorities, like reconciliation and transitional justice, like living together. So it was, she gave them this very practical know-how, which they were all really grateful for. And I also, in the meantime, I typed a couple of resources in the chat. You can, from the BBC and Ethical Journalism Network, that you may find useful. Thank you, Aziz.
Thanks,
you.
thanks, Marika. Okay, so let's go to our other questions and comments from participants. Rachel, are you there? Would you like to ask your question? You can also tell us where you're phoning in from, please.
Yes, I'm here. My name is Rachel Ndwati. I'm a broadcast journalist and a digital entrepreneur. I'm from Nairobi, Kenya. And I just want to ask, as journalists, we always tell stories. And sometimes, especially here in Kenya, you get to find that there's a lot of stories that are being told. And people just get tired of telling these stories and people also get tired of listening to these stories because we're really hearing the bad. And especially when you pitch a story, most editors will look at what is happening in the negative aspect. And so my question is, how do journalists make sure that they actually don't just tell the bad side of a story? For example, if I'm talking about, political instability or how people are being displaced, how do I tell stories that actually offer solutions? Because most of the time you get to find that most people really are tired of just being told the same old stories, the same old questions. And my point of view is, my question would be rather, are there any other capacity building programs that, help journalists to tell the other side of the story? Say you're talking about climate change. Are there any capacity building platforms that help a journalist to just understand how they can report on climate change, but just not the negative aspect, but also provide solutions to all these problems that are facing the world right now? Thank you.
Rachel, may I ask you a question? Are you working as a journalist already?
Yes, I focus on mainly telling stories of audiovisual storytelling as well as doing digital investigations. So most of the time I've been doing these stories, I get to see that they're basically one-sided. I try to, for example, there's a story I did on people in Kenya being displaced after the post-election violence of 2007, 2008, and I also did 2017. And I really thought, okay, yes, I am telling the story. I am really telling, Kenyans how their fellow counterparts are being displaced, but I'm not giving the solution. So what I'm doing is I'm just adding on to, I'm just adding salt to the injury.
Mm-hmm. So look, I'm going to speak now as a journalist. And I think something that we get caught up in as journalists, having worked in newspapers, we often hear this slogan or saying in the newsrooms that says, if it bleeds, it leads. There's this thinking that only negative news will make the front page or will get the headlines. I think it's a responsibility of us as journalists to also look at the good things happening in our society. For example, the Kenyan case study, people have been displaced. Do we follow up? Are we doing the work to follow up to look at what happens when people actually live in peace, when they get to go back home? This is something we need to do as journalists as well. And I think what happens very often is that we get stuck in the cycle of bad news, bad news, bad news. We don't follow the story to the end. And sometimes there is, dare I say, a happy ending to some stories. I think we really need to start thinking or changing the way we do think about journalism as well. So we have more questions. Joseph Okumu, are you with us? And do you want to ask your question?
No, it's not a question, it's a comment. I'm fine with the answers that have been given. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. And then Rahel, do you still want to ask your question? I'm not. Rahel, I see you still with us. Do you still want?
Yeah, but I think I've got my answer.
Okay, thank you. And where are you phoning us from, Rahel?
Okay, I'm from Ethiopia.
Okay, wonderful. It's wonderful to have so many Africans with us today. Kenya, Ethiopia, amazing. So I think something else that we also would like to talk about is, let's talk a bit more about, solutions, right? Rachel, of course, brought up, oh, Sangha just asked the question, by the way, may I join the Association for Religion Journalists? Uday, do you maybe want to answer that to everyone on this group? Do you want to maybe talk about how people who are interested in developing their religion journalism skills can join the association? Uday, are you still with us? Okay, well, I don't see Uday, but so as I mentioned, yeah, it's very easy to join the association. I will send a link. I will share a link on the chat for the association, and you can go onto the website and then you can join from there. Let's get Mehmet online. Mehmet, do you have a question or comment?
Yes, thank you so much, Yazid. Actually, I would like to just, contribute to Sangai's questions about what are some of the resources for journalists in building stable societies. Actually, for that, I would like to give a little background about the Journalists and Writers Foundation, why and how it was established, because that really resonates to his question. So in 1994, at the time, our organization was established in Turkey, and there was a polarization in the society, not only on religion, but political, social, economic, and different polarization. So some of the, journalists, writers, academics, and thinkers, they got together at a common point to provide some solutions as opinion builders to the policymakers, to the society. So they organized conferences, seminars and workshops, and they come up with some declarations that produce, some ways of building peace or cohesion in society. Then the organization was very well received by the society, and these thinkers and these journalists, they were really, trying to bring people from all different parts of the society, religious, non-religious, different political opinions together to discuss on common issues. And then this became bigger and bigger and bigger. Then the organization became international. Then it organized conferences in the region, and then it became an international organization. So now we are in the US. We are based here. We are headquartered in the US. And so what I wanted to say, from our own experience is that, you can always look for different resources, different organizations, but you can take the leadership to initiate something in your local community. It could start in a city, in a state, then, bringing people together, like-minded people who would like to contribute to building stable societies. And then that could eventually, bring journalists who would like to contribute to the society. So that's what I wanted to share this. And leadership definitely plays a big role. So if Sangai, he's a journalist and he's a Buddhist leader. So I think that could be a good initiative for him. And secondly, I would like to ask a question to Rajendra. And I know that you're a social cohesion leader in South Africa. What are some of the initiatives that brought journalists, writers, or academics together to build a social cohesion in South Africa? So could you just share some examples?
Thank you very much, Mehmet. But what I would do, I would like to use this as an example because we are initiating it in South Africa as social cohesion advocates. It is an example of a case study in Madagascar. Madagascar's values of solidarity, social harmony, and mutual tolerance have helped the country avoid open conflict despite numerous political conflicts since independence. However, the political crisis that spanned the years 2009 to 2014 was particularly difficult, causing economic isolation, increased poverty, and a lot of strain on Madagascar's strong societal bonds. However, to help build up the media as a voice for social cohesion, a media conglomerate in Madagascar implemented their Promoting Social Cohesion Through Media project in Madagascar from 2012 April to March 2014 with funding from the European Union. Now, what happened here? They partnered with 26 radio stations across 10 regions to build the capacity of the journalists, improve the production and broadcasting equipment, create exchange networks, and produce and broadcast radio programming. In all, they trained 62 Malagasy journalists on conflict-sensitive journalism and organized a study tour for 5 of those journalists to Côte d'Ivoire to learn about their work during the electoral period. These programs were designed, Mehmet, to educate the public on issues such as law, human rights, civic responsibility, and to provide important news throughout the country, including rural areas. However, their impact was more than just informational. They were able to change the perceptions and attitudes of listeners on a variety of topics, from tolerance to gender equality. They also improved understanding between people living in different regions. The listeners realized that the radio news programs were more credible, neutral, and moderate than others they heard, thus strengthening confidence and trust in the social stations. So we are using this as a model to implement as social cohesion advocates in South Africa as well. In this way, we'll be trying to promote more credible news that our moderator is informing us about, so that we can now work towards making journalists an opportunity for making changes in society. And I think through that, we can tackle gender-based violence, we can tackle youth problems, that are social inequalities. We can tackle all these things if we make journalism credible again. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
I think this is great. Thank you.
Thanks, Raj, and thanks, Mehmet, for the question. Just to share with everybody in the chat, the link to the International Association of Religion Journalists is there. You are more than welcome to check it out and join. I'm now going to open up for anyone who wants to give feedback or comments on today's topic. Of course, the idea for us was to talk about how, just to remind ourselves, journalists play a role in creating stable societies. Does anybody want to raise their hand and ask a question? We are now going to also get feedback. Tell us what your thoughts are. How do you think you as a journalist could play a role in creating a stable society? Do you think it's even the responsibility of journalists, to create a stable, to be part of creating a stable society?
We also have Mercy, who wrote a question. Maybe she can start.
Hello, Mercy. Please do tell us also where you're phoning from.
Mercy from. So my question is, how well can you pitch your story so that it covers the aspect of creating a stable society?
So you're saying the angle. Are you talking about the angle of the story? Are you asking, how do you present this angle that your story is creating a stable society? Is that, can I just get clarity on your question, please?
Yeah, my question is, when pitching your story, what should you consider, or what are some of the points you should write in your pitch so that it covers the angle of creating a stable society?
Okay, let me ask you a quick question. Do you think that journalists in general, through reporting, do you think that we contribute towards creating stable societies? Are you working as a journalist, Mercy?
Yes, I'm a broadcast journalist.
So do you think that every day when you are going out, do you think that your reporting contributes towards creating a stable society?
I feel that most of the stories that journalists tell are they mainly aim to bring out the negative side of a story. So I don't feel like they create a stable society unless we bring the positive side of the story too.
Okay. And do you think that sometimes when we report on these negative stories, do you think that somehow they could bring about positive change? For example, if we report on, let's keep it very basic. If we report on street lights that are not working in a particular neighborhood and, the street lights get fixed, do you think that we are kind of contributing towards creating a stable society as journalists?
Yeah, if a story tries to bring the negative side and it is impactful, I mean it brings some change, then yes, it is creating a stable society. But if it brings in some conflicts, then no.
Okay, so I guess we then need to be looking for the solutions as well as the problems. Maybe that's how our journalism can contribute towards creating stable societies. If we write only about the negative things, if we write only about the problems, maybe then people will begin to feel that everything is just a mess. I mean, I'm just sharing a thought, and I do think that journalism and journalists, I honestly do think that we could do a lot better at also keeping our eyes on the solutions, what is actually being done in our countries and in our communities that works, instead of always just talking about the things that don't work. This is an open conversation. Anyone can jump in if anybody wants to add, if anybody would like to talk about their personal experience as well as a journalist and how they believe they are contributing towards creating a stable society, please feel free to do so.
Can I say something, Yazid?
Yes, please, Marika, of course.
Yeah, I just remembered now that, the question that the issue that you just raised now, I remembered a live event it was 20 years ago when I moved to the UK to escape the war as a very young person, and I went to this live event where famous journalist Jon Snow from the Channel 4 was talking. It was talking to audiences and talking about some of his work. And at the time, of course, the war in Yugoslavia was still very prominent. And then he shared some of his experiences from around the world, reporting from conflict zones. And then I asked him a question. So, why is it that you never go back to these conflict zones to report about peace? Once the conflict is over, why these former conflict zones are not in focus anymore? And then he didn't really have an answer, but ultimately he said, because, once they stop being conflict zones, they're not news anymore. They're not a piece of news. But this, so I think it's an important issue to, to think about. Obviously, they're news, and journalists who produce news, but there are also journalists who don't work on news, but who document our everyday life, as we heard here. And I think one of the ways, so it is a big question. I agree with you completely. And I think one of the ways of how journalists can, I don't know whether they can be part of like advocate solutions, but certainly journalists can talk about values and principles of the that the societies, which stable societies should have, democratic principles, democratic values, respect for, respect for diversity, etc. So I think one of the ways of being a journalist that contributes to the stability is to actually be oriented towards values and experiences and practices that promote these values.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Marika. I think that is also a valid point. So it's not that we are there to change things, but it's more there that we are to reflect. So we are not going to be the ones who are going to fix the streetlights, but we are going to be talking about it. And also I think this idea of talking about the stuff that's going right in our society, that's something that we should be adopting too. It's not just always about that journalist who only goes to the war zone or the conflict zone when people are killing each other, but maybe going back and looking at how people are rebuilding their lives. That's a story too. Raj,
I agree completely.
Can I share a very good story? Right?
Yeah, sure.
There was a weekly column that I had in one of the local newspapers, which was entitled "A Day in the Life of." And every week I featured a different person, normal people in society, a petrol attendant, a car guard, a cashier in a supermarket. So I had this weekly column featuring these people. It created such a warm, good feeling with people because normal, ordinary members of society were featured in a newspaper on a weekly basis. And it was very, very popular. And I think it is warm news like this that we need to share with people, share the different religions, share the different cultures, the values of people, because that will now create stable societies for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mehmet, do you have a question or anything that you want to contribute?
Yes, actually, Marika talked about it, but I would like to, address this question to Marika and Uday. So, do you think journalists are role models and leaders in building stable societies, other than their work, but their personal values, principles? How does, they contribute as a role model and leaders in the society?
I think, thank you very much, Mehmet. I think that's a very important question. And there's certainly a number of examples where journalists start as journalists, just, being journalists and speaking their mind or reporting on what they think is relevant. But then they do become role models. And we have seen this in many countries. I mean, we have it in the Balkans, we have it, I live in the UK, we have it there, we've seen it in the States as well. But it's also, it's a big burden, because I think once a journalist becomes a role model, it's, it puts a lot of pressure on the person to consistently and constantly maintain, and fulfill the expectations of those who see him as a role model. And I would like to think, at least from my experience of working with the journalists, that most people don't start with this idea, oh, I'm going to be a role model. And certainly, journalists do struggle with the burden of being identified with certain ideas or approaches or values or pathways, political pathways or economic pathways. So it's there, but I'm not sure it's something that journalists perhaps aspire to. And then if they, if it happens that they slip, you know, it can become a big problem. But also something that we didn't mention in the conversation today when it comes to creating stable societies, you know, often these highly prominent journalists become targets of the regimes who don't appreciate their work towards stability, towards human rights, towards democratization, towards internal security. So they become exposed as well. And by, you know, by doing what they do, they ultimately put themselves to harm, which comes, yeah, in combination with this high prominence. So there is like two sides of the medal.
Thank you. Uday, would you like to contribute maybe from an Indian perspective or South Asia?
Okay, it's not a problem. We do have other contributions as well that have been highlighted. We have a message from Olanshile. Olanshile, is there something that you'd like to add to the conversation? And please also tell us where you're calling from. Okay, not hearing anything. I see there's a number of people who are on the call as well. I don't want to single you out, but I'm just looking through the names. If there's anything you want to say, I'm just going through the list of names. I'm seeing Yasir Yilmaz from Poland. I'm seeing Gurjar. I'm seeing Sophia, Seval, Rana. You guys are from all over, guys and girls. You're from all over. It would be great to hear from you as well. Any reflections in the last few minutes? We have about 3 minutes left. And I really want us to feel that we can all contribute. And this is an interactive conversation, right? So we really want to make sure that we hear from participants as well. We'd like to hear your feedback, your contribution, anything that you would like to reflect on as well. And if you are working as a journalist, please share your reflections with us on your experience as well. Is there anybody who'd want to say anything?
Yazid, do you mind if I say, I'm sorry, you know, I talked too much, but I think, you know, like today's topic is, yeah, today's topic is very important. And I have been, you know, joining different UN programs for the last maybe like more than 10 plus. Globally, right, and then I think, you know, like this could be an amazing, you know, topic for discussion at the United Nations, and so maybe, you know, to further the discussion and to bring it to a larger audience, maybe, you know, like together as this group and the speakers, maybe we can come up with a program that we can organize at the United Nations, maybe after this September, like General Assembly. I think that could be a, you know, great idea. You know, what do you guys think?
Hello. Hello.
Hi there. Is somebody speaking to us?
Yeah, this is
Abdullah
Sanjay
has his hand up.
This is Sanjay again.
Sanjay, maybe shall we give the mic to Abdullah first because he raised his hand before, and then we can turn to you if Yazid is okay for a couple more minutes.
Sure, let's go for it. Let's go for it. Yeah.
Hello, good evening, everyone. It's evening in Nigeria right now. My name is Abdullah Salahuddin from Nigeria.
Welcome. Please feel free. Go. Yeah, we can hear you. Please feel free to make your contribution.
Okay, so I'm a mass communication and media studies student in Nigeria right now. So when I joined the class, I've heard a lot about journalism and how to create and sustain in this journalism career. So I would like to contribute in what aspect, what's it called, in what someone said about creating stable society. The negative stories alone cannot create stable society. I'm not sure if I get that right, but I heard the person saying it's only negative stories that make rounds of journalists, or that make journalists more popular, or that journalists can write on. I don't know if I get that correct.
There are some people in the journalism industry. In fact, we can say in many newsrooms, there's a belief that if it bleeds, it leads, which means that, if it's chaos or if it's bad news, as we call it, that it will make the front page and it will be in the newspaper. So there is that thinking, yes.
Oh, all right. I've clarified what I want to clarify. Thank you so much.
So are you working as a journalist? Just to ask, just to get some clarity.
Yeah, I'm working as a campus journalist in my school, in my university, my news organization, campus organization.
Yeah. Well, I think what we've definitely heard today is, that there is a need for more balanced reporting. We do need journalists to also look at what is working in our society. There's a big movement called solutions journalism. So we are not always looking only at the things that are falling apart, as you guys famously say in Nigeria, things fall apart.
Okay, I'm with you.
So we've now reached 9:32 a.m. I think we've had wonderful contributions from everybody. Going forward, Sangha, did you still want to add something? Sorry, I'm just remembering now.
Yeah, if there's time, let me speak a few lines.
Yes, please go ahead, and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, I just want to thank Mr. Mehmet. I don't know the exact pronunciation of his name. Is it Mehmet or something? Yeah, Mehmet, he was complimenting my points. Thank you for that. And along with that, he was also pointing that if somebody can, and like me, if I can start something in Bhutan, for this, what guidelines or do you have something, seed fund directions to start sort of activities from the association? And one point I like of him was he was proposing future plans if we can organize some particular meetings focused for religion for the journalist. That would be a great idea, and it's not only virtual, but we can also think of campus training or something else. Am I clear?
Yeah, sure. I'm sure that Mehmet and the JWF will be in contact with all participants as well going forward. I think it's time for us. Let's see with this one last comment. It's just from Abdullah. Thanks, Abdullah. He's just saying this is a great platform for students like me to learn. Thank you so much for the opportunity, JWF. Believe me, we are all wanting to improve and enhance journalism and the way we do journalism. I don't have anything else to say. I'd like to ask somebody from the JWF to perhaps close the session. I just want to thank everybody. Thank you, Marika. Thank you, Uday. Thank you, Raj. Thank you, participants.
Yeah, thank you so much. Maybe last words from Raj, Uday, too, and Marika, so we can say goodbyes.
Yes, all I can say that I would like to reiterate that the media can play a very positive role in peace building, conflict prevention. Recognition of this has led to increasing programs, and I think this platform is just that program. All the journalists that are here, budding journalists, I have a very, very important role to play. And I think going forward, let's now try to be positive, and this world will be a better place to live in. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Uday, anything, any last comments, goodbyes from you? If you're able to speak, if your mic is on. Okay, he may have some connection
Thank you,
problems. Goodbye. Thank you so much. And Marika, lastly?
Yes, just big thank you. It was a great session. It was a great conversation. And I would just like to say, I believe in networking and connecting, and don't forget, you know, wherever you are as a journalist, don't make yourself isolated, you know, make sure to connect, to stay connected to your friends, to your colleagues, to other people who may not seem like obvious allies, but very often they are. And yes, just work together, and good luck, everyone.
Thank you so much. And Yazid, once again, it's always a pleasure to work with you. Thank you so much for your moderation today. Our next session will be on reporting from conflict and war zones on Friday, this Friday, same time, 11 a.m. with New York time, Eastern Standard Time. And we'll be speaking on challenges and opportunities. We will have two journalists. Thomas Sideris from Greece. He's an award-winning documentary director and investigative journalist doing credible work on documenting human rights violations in many different conflict zones. And we will hear from Isobel Koshiev. She's the Guardian correspondent, currently reporting from Ukraine since actually the beginning of the war. So I believe that would be a wonderful session too. So I look forward to seeing everyone this coming Friday, the same time, 11 a.m. with New York Eastern Standard Time. Thank you so much.
How should we connect, keep in touch with Marika, Mehmet, and others?
Sure, if they allow me, I will.
Shall we get connected?
Of course, I will share our speakers' email addresses if they allow me to. That would be great to keep.
That's fine with me.
Yeah.
To keep the conversation on.
Yes.
Perfect. Perfect.
Bye-bye.
So
thank you.
See you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Keep
you.
well.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
No further session.
Bye.